The Miller family's car, crunching over snow-covered gravel, announced their arrival at the secluded Victorian Inn. Towering evergreens surrounded the building, their branches heavy with frost, and the faint glow of warm lights promised a Christmas escape far from the city. Yet, as Mark Miller shut the car door, a chill raced down his spine, a cold that had nothing to do with winter. The inn looked charming from the outside, ivy crawling along weathered bricks, wreaths hung neatly on every window, and smoke curling from the chimney. But stepping through the front door, the family was met not with laughter or cheer, but with an eerie, suffocating silence. The lobby smelled faintly of pine and wax, but there was an undercurrent of something else, something metallic and bitter. "Welcome," said the innkeeper, his smile polite but stiff. His eyes, pale and unnervingly still, seemed to follow the Millers as they moved through the room. "We've been expecting you." The family exchanged glances. It was polite, yes, but something in the way he said it made the hairs on the back of Susan Miller's neck rise. They signed in and were shown to their rooms. Each door bore a brass nameplate etched with names that did not belong to anyone they knew. "Past guests," the innkeeper said vaguely. Inside their suite, the warmth from the fireplace barely reached the corners. The room was cozy, furnished with antique chairs, a four-poster bed, and shelves lined with old books, yet each item felt wrong. Portraits on the walls caught their attention, families painted in joyful poses, yet their eyes seemed to shift ever so slightly, as if observing the Millers' every move. Emma, their 8-year-old daughter, froze in front of one portrait, whispering, "He's looking at me." At dinner, the atmosphere was even stranger. Other guests dined in polite silence, exchanging only quiet, hesitant words. One woman with pale skin and dark circles around her eyes leaned toward Susan and whispered, "Do not wander the halls tonight. Some rooms, they don't like strangers." Mark laughed it off nervously, but as they returned to their suite, a gust of cold air extinguished the candles. The hallway outside their door seemed longer than before, shadows twisting unnaturally in the corners. Then came the sound, soft footsteps pacing back and forth. Mark opened the door, nothing but empty corridor. Emma tugged at Susan's sleeve, pointing toward the frost-covered window. "Look," she said. A man in a black top hat stood among the trees, his face obscured by shadow. He didn't move, only stared. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, he vanished. Trying to shake off the unease, the Millers settled into bed, but sleep refused them. In the dark, faint whispers seeped through the walls, barely audible, yet unmistakably human. Doors creaked open and closed in the distance. Something unseen skittered across the floorboards. Then finally, as the first light of dawn bled through the frosty panes, a single truth had settled over them like the snow outside. This Christmas stay was far from ordinary, and the inn had only just begun to reveal its true face. Morning light filtered weakly through the frost-covered windows, but the warmth of day brought little comfort. The Miller family tried to shake off the unsettling events of the previous night, convincing themselves it had been imagination, or perhaps the creaking of an old building. Yet, as they ventured into the inn's grand dining hall for breakfast, it was clear that something was profoundly wrong. Other guests ate in hushed silence, glancing nervously at one another, their eyes flickering toward corners of the room that seemed off. The chandelier above swayed slightly, though the air was still. The silverware clinked in a rhythm that didn't match any human hand. Emma tugged at Susan's sleeve, whispering, "They're all watching us." After breakfast, curiosity drew the Millers toward the inn's abandoned wing, supposedly closed for renovations. The hallway leading there was cordoned off with yellowed tape and a sign that read, "Do not enter." But faint sounds of laughter, children's laughter, echoed from behind the door. Mark hesitated, glancing at the empty corridor. A sudden draft blew snow inside, chilling their bones. "Just for a look," Susan said. Together they pushed the door open. Inside, the air was frigid, carrying the scent of pine and decay. The wallpaper peeled like curling skin, and the furniture was coated in a thin layer of frost. And then Emma gasped. Across the room, ghostly children in faded Victorian clothing played, spinning around a Christmas tree that flickered in spectral light. Mark blinked. "Emma, they're not real." "They are," she insisted, pointing. "They want me to come with them." Before they could react, the door slammed shut behind them. The children vanished, leaving only the echo of their laughter. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting into grotesque forms. Susan grabbed Emma's hand, dragging her toward the door, but the corridor stretched unnaturally, hallways elongating like the inn itself was alive. Back in the main hall, the rest of the inn's guests had gathered, whispering about families who had vanished in the past decades. One pale-faced woman approached, her voice a trembling whisper. "The bells, when they ring, the inn keeps you. Some never leave." That evening, the inn transformed further. The firelight warped the walls into grotesque faces, mirrors reflected impossible visions, and ornaments seemed to shift on their own. Every shadow flickered with unnatural motion. The snowstorm outside raged, cutting off any hope of escape. Phones and devices lost signal. The Millers were completely isolated. As night deepened, whispers called their names, growing louder, more insistent. Emma's top-hatted man appeared at the window again, closer now, his presence more threatening. The inn seemed to pulse with life, walls breathing, furniture twitching, lights flickering in sync with their mounting fear. Mark decided to confront the innkeeper, seeking answers. The old man's smile had stiffened into a grim line. The inn, it hungers, it keeps what it wants. Some families it enjoys the company, others it devours. His words were calm, but every syllable dripped with menace. The Millers realized the nightmare had only begun. Trapped within the inn's walls, isolated by the storm, surrounded by spectral children, shifting shadows, and the malevolent will of the building itself, they were forced to confront the horrifying truth. Their Christmas stay was no vacation. It was a trap. By the third night, the Millers no longer recognized the inn as a safe place. Hallways twisted unnaturally. Doors led to rooms that hadn't existed before, and shadows moved independently of any light. Even the air felt heavy, thick with a faint metallic scent of decay. The storm outside raged on, the wind howling like anguished spirits trapped in the frozen landscape. Emma, unable to sleep, kept returning to the abandoned wing. She insisted the ghostly children were calling her, beckoning her toward the faint glow of the Christmas tree in the frost-coated room. "They're lonely," she whispered to Susan. "They just want to play." But the laughter that followed wasn't playful. It carried a chilling undertone, as if hiding sharp teeth beneath their smiles. Desperate to understand what they were facing, Mark and Susan scoured the room for clues. Behind a loose panel in the wall, they discovered a leather-bound journal. Its pages were brittle, ink faded, but its words painted a horrific history. The inn's original owner, a man with a top hat and cruel grin, had lured families every Christmas. Guests who failed to heed the rules vanished, their souls trapped, forever repeating their last moments in the inn. The journal warned that the inn itself fed on fear, animating decorations, shadows, and even snow to prevent escape. That night the inn fully revealed its sinister nature. Dolls scuttled across floors, wreaths twisted like living snakes, and carolers' reflections in the mirrors contorted into screaming faces. Emma disappeared, drawn into the abandoned wing by the spectral children. Mark and Susan pursued her through hallways that seemed to stretch endlessly, snow drifting through broken windows like whispering hands. At the center of the wing, they found a distorted Christmas tree, its ornaments writhing as if alive. The children circled it, their laughter echoing like a sinister choir. The top-hatted figure stood behind the tree, towering and impossibly still, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Mark realized with horror that the figure wasn't just a ghost, it was the inn itself, embodied in the cruel will of its founder. Susan tried to reach Emma, but the children's hands shot out, freezing her in place. Shadows lunged, twisting the corridors, making escape nearly impossible. Every scream, every footstep fed the inn's hunger, animating the decorations and turning the once charming inn into a nightmare landscape. Desperation and fear sharpened Mark's focus. He remembered a cryptic line from the journal. "Only the bell of the founder frees the trapped souls." Somewhere in the inn's towering structure, the bell waited. If they could ring it before midnight, perhaps they could break the curse and save Emma and themselves. But the building resisted, hallways contorting, staircases twisting, the snowstorm outside battering the windows with relentless fury. With the top-hatted figure looming closer and the ghostly children circling like predators, the Millers had no choice. They would have to fight through the living nightmare of the inn, descend into its haunted heart, and reach the bell tower before the clock struck 12. Failure would mean joining the countless souls trapped in the inn's eternal Christmas nightmare. The storm outside reached a deafening roar as Mark, Susan, and Emma raced through the twisting corridors of the inn. The walls seemed to pulse, breathing with a life of their own. Frost crept across the floor, curling around their ankles like icy fingers. Behind them, the ghostly children laughed, their faces twisted in grins far too wide, hands stretching impossibly to block the family's path. Emma led the way, her small hand gripping Susan's tightly. "The bell!" she shouted. "We have to ring the bell!" Her voice carried both fear and a strange, urgent clarity, as if the inn itself had spoken through her. Every step was a battle. Living decorations lunged, wreaths lashed like snakes, and the top-hatted figure glided closer with silent menace, his glowing eyes fixed on them like a predator sizing up prey. The staircase to the bell tower appeared before them, impossibly tall and winding, coated in ice that glinted like shards of glass. Mark gritted his teeth, helping Susan and Emma up, each step trembling beneath them as the inn twisted around them. Shadows stretched long and jagged, claws slashing at their heels, whispers of past victims crying for help filling the air. Reaching the tower room, they found the bell, massive, ancient, and etched with the inn's history. The top-hatted figure stood at the entrance, a towering shadow against the dim light. "You cannot leave," he intoned, voice echoing with the weight of countless lost souls. "This is Christmas forever." Mark, heart pounding, pulled the rope. The bell groaned, vibrating with a sound so deep it shook the walls. The inn convulsed violently, ornaments shattered, snow swirled in cyclones inside the hallways, and ghostly children shrieked, spinning around the bell in a frenzy. Shadows screamed as if in agony. Seconds stretched, each one a lifetime as the chime repeated over and over. The top-hatted figure faltered, his form flickering like a candle in the wind. With a final, thunderous clang, the bell's sound tore through the inn. The walls stopped moving. The ghostly children froze, then vanished. The shadows collapsed into themselves. Even the storm outside fell silent, leaving only an eerie calm. The Millers stumbled out into the dawn-lit forest. Snow crunched underfoot, pristine and still. The inn sat silently behind them, appearing ordinary, as if nothing had happened. But the footprints in the snow, new, ominous, and leading to the entrance, hinted that the inn's hunger was far from satisfied. Emma shivered, glancing back. "They'll be back next year," she whispered, voice trembling. Susan hugged her tightly, and Mark led them to the car. The road ahead stretched endless and empty, but the memory of that night, of laughter turning to screams, of walls breathing and shadows hunting them, would haunt them forever. Even as they drove away, a faint, distorted Christmas carol drifted from the direction of the inn, a chilling reminder. The curse of the Victorian inn had not ended. It waited, patient and hungry, for the next family to arrive, to turn festive cheer into pure terror once more.